Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Tech Backstage. It's Monday. We're just coming out of the weekend, and I'm joined today by Gene Patrick, the Chief Executive Officer at ScaleUp Edge. Gene, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Eddie. I'm happy to be here.
Excited to have you on the show. Really excited to kind of dive into this topic a little bit more. This is something that we've been dealing with ourselves, and so I'm excited to sit down and talk to you about it, and talk about how companies in that scale up phase of their company's life, how they actually kind of take that and grow and get to the next stage. But before we do that, I would love if you could introduce yourself to the audience and talk a little bit about your backstory and how you ended up becoming the CEO of Scale Up Edge.
Yeah, happy to. So I have worked in a lot of different industries in my career, from services to product to within industries of legal, software, and it's been a great ride for me. And what's been really interesting is along the way, I've always been asked to either grow, build, or fix. And so, it's those three areas. And I always ask myself, it's a challenge, it's stressful, but it's all about the results, and that's what
Mhm.
really drives me. My my last role, I was the chief transformation officer for a software development company, and we were going through some pretty significant scale, and learned a lot along the way, and worked with some incredible people. How I got to Scale Up Edge, the a co-founder, she was actually working for a venture capital company out of New York, and she traveled around the world as an operating partner. She reached out to me, and I knew her through. She was one of the investors for my last company, and she said, there's a way that we need to kind of box up or provide resources to scale up tech executives, and basically that's what we wanted to do, was to focus. Our vision is to focus on creating a digital experience that opens up the scale up ecosystem. There's a lot of scale up executives that want to give back to the organization, and there's nuances, and there's ways to do things that has worked for people, and people want to share things that didn't work, so that we have a greater success factor of tech SaaS scale up companies that become more successful. So that's how I came here to Scale Up Edge. We're in the process of creating this marketplace for leadership development, and really what it's doing is unlocking the scale up ecosystem.
Awesome. And just really quick for, those of us who are joining us right now, just like we were talking about a little bit backstage, I'd love to define what scale up is, right? Just because I think there might be some people who are listening in who are curious to know what scale up is, and like we were talking about backstage, I think it'd be good to kind of just discuss that a little bit and define it.
Yeah, so scale up is a stage of a company. So everybody knows about startup. Have an idea, you have a founder that's working through the idea and trying to find your product market fit. And then a lot of us know about enterprise, the large companies that have taken it on to that next level. But the scale up stage is kind of that messy middle, we call it, the teenage years. So once you have product market fit, you've the market, you've addressed the market, sales are coming in, you're having a reoccurring revenue, and now you're ready to grow or scale with minimal expense. And so there's different stages within scale up, but that's really the area that we focus on. I work with different companies. We help other companies that are in the scale up stage from a founder perspective, but they're moving toward that scale up. So what we do is we bring the best of the best from other scale up executives, whether it's templates or other kinds of things, connections, networks, so that when you're in scale up, you don't have a lot of time for research. You don't have a lot of time to you don't want to, you're going to make mistakes, but you don't have a lot of time to find the mistake and then try to make it happen. You want to learn from other people. And what was really interesting, Eddie, to me is the amount of people out there that are willing to share their
Yeah.
experiences, whether they're good or bad. And so, it doesn't mean that what they experience is going to work for you, but they're going to be some golden nuggets that you're going to be able to take along the way and incorporate into your company.
Yeah, and I think you hit on like a few different things there that I think are great. I think one of the first things, like you just said, you're going to make mistakes at the scale up stage, which arguably that's where I feel we are as well right now. But at the scale up stage, you're going to be so busy you don't even have time to reflect on the mistakes you made.
Right.
You just have to be like, all right, put like, or at least this is how I feel a lot of times. Like you're like, and we use agile methodologies a lot. So like I'm gonna be like,
Hmm.
okay, I'm gonna put that error in the backlog and I'll retro it later because I don't even have time to like internalize all the things I did wrong doing that. But I think that's great. And I think one of the from my perspective, one of the things that I enjoy the most and the people that have helped me the most, just like you're saying, the our mentors and advisors that work with us, and we're also getting into using subject matter expert consultants, which is something
Hmm.
we'll dive into in a second. But I briefly wanted to circle back. Is there, because you work specifically with SaaS companies, right, at Scale Up Edge, but in the scale up stage of a company, have you found any sort of, I don't want to necessarily say revenue like targets that are defined or employee headcounts defined? How do you, like, just for any company that's a startup and talking about product market fit, is there any sort of like minimum either headcount revenue, or is there a way that you can kind of like tangibly define a company that's moved into the scale up stage?
You know, yes, there are kind of parameters that you could put around the box of, when you're moving into a scale up, you're probably around the 10 to 20 million dollar annual recurring revenue,
Okay.
and the number of people that you probably have are anywhere from 50 to 100. And the reason that's such a wide range is some companies move into growth stage quicker than others, right? So what does that mean? So let me give you an example. I was working with a company that said, I was working with their CEO, and we were talking through some templates that other scale up executives had provided, and really what it's all about is sharing that information. And he was sharing with me that I said, so do you have product market fit? He said, absolutely. We have advisors that are like well known throughout the world. We have a product that is revolutionizing kind of the industry that they're in. I said, share with me what your annual recurring revenue is. Then I said, you don't have to give me exact numbers, but kind of it gives me kind of a baseline. He goes, we haven't brought any revenue in, and I said, well, respectfully, you don't have product market fit.
Right.
And what happens, and it's not a bad thing. What happens is, like me, I'm like this too. Is I get so excited about the product or the service that I provide that it's hard to see. Really, when do I have to shift and move based on where the market is and based on who my clientele is? What was so exciting about this customer or this client, as an example, 6 months later, we were going through this process, and he came back and they shifted their strategy for a different kind of target market, and they were cranking it, doing really well. So it's just having conversations with people, and I don't want to tell you that I have all the answers, but I will tell you that it's those golden nuggets that you get, and you bring it into your experience with what you have, with what your company is, and it's all about learning from each other and growing from that.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's important too to be able to iterate quickly on those nuggets, right? Make sure
Yes.
try them, see if it's going to work for you. Understand that what's going to work for someone else may not work for you.
Right.
But try and take it, try to learn from it, try to understand, and maybe even try to adapt it a little bit so that it does fit more into your flow as a company, right?
Exactly.
I think it's really important to not take the advice as it like 100% as it is, and under like try and like fit it in somewhere, right? You might have to mold it around a little bit.
Yeah.
Which actually I think is a good segue into discussing the topic that we're going to talk about today. You called it baselining your executive team. Specifically talking about trying to fill the gaps at an organization as opposed to filling titles. Let's talk about that. You gave a really good example, Backstage, and I love this example about hey, I want to hire. I'm going to call it a CXO, right? Like, so we can be,
Okay.
we can be
Yes.
position agnostic here. But the thing is, a lot of times you get into these situations as a founder, as somebody who's running a company. You go, oh, you know what? I think I need somebody to come in and be the executive over a technology department, over a marketing department, right? And you
Hmm.
kind of get fixated on this having a leadership team. I think that's one thing that came in. A lot of people come in and talk to me about is, hey, you don't necessarily need it now, but you better start thinking about it further on down the road. But talk to me a little bit about hiring executives, because it's hard, it's expensive. What's been your
Hmm.
experience in trying to stand up leadership teams or executive teams at companies that are in a scale up stage of their company?
Yeah. You know, I will tell you that in going through Scale Up, these are, your audience, the audience here may have experienced this, as well as Eddie, your experiences with your existing company is that there are certain capabilities that you need as you're moving quickly through growth. And what I would suggest to you is you have to take a step back and look at what your team capabilities are. What are the competencies? Because, you know, um, when I went through my role in my career, I didn't just focus on this competency. I learned and grew along the way. And so, have I been part of sales? Yes. Is that a passion of mine? Is that something that's all I want to do? No, I like working with a number of different kind of capabilities. So take a look at your executive team or take a look at your team and look at the capabilities. Look at their scale up experience. I would even say that, as I shared with you, Eddie, earlier in Backstage, is that worked with another company that the CEO came from a very large organization. He was not a CEO at the time. He was a general manager of a large tech company, moving into the CEO role of a scale up. Great, smart guy, has, successful, highly successful, but he was used to having a lot of resources at his fingertips coming from a large company. So understanding who has scale up experience. So if you have a team that has all enterprise experience, you might want to think about adding to what you're looking at. How many have either startup or scale up capabilities? Third step you want to do is to think about, where's your company? Are
Right.
you in a startup? Are you in scale up? And then the last thing you really want to go is, what gaps do I have and how do I fill it
Yeah.
versus hiring the title?
Yeah, and I love that, and I'd like to dive a little bit more into that because I think it circles back a little bit to um, one of the things that I was talking about. One of the things that we're starting to work on ourselves is using subject matter experts, right? But I think one of the things too, especially in a scale up, is a lot of people are wearing multiple hats, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, oh, hey, I want to hire this chief marketing officer, but it's like, you and maybe some people from the sales team, or even some people from the operations team might already be doing some of that stuff. And yeah, well, it's great that you want to. Why you actually want to kind of carve that department out. That's one thing that we're working on a lot right now, is trying to actually carve out dedicated departments. But you also have to understand about what's the process we're trying to put in place here, right? Like, I think one of the things that I like, at least that I learned, was that if you don't have processes in place, if you don't already understand, for example, if we're talking about sales, if you don't already, if you don't understand your acquisition channels, if you don't understand what your, go to market strategy is, what your, ideal customer profile is, you're not going to be able to hire an executive to come in and like just build all that stuff up, without without it being super expensive, and B, with no guarantee of it actually succeeding, right? Because you as the founder, you're the best one to understand the vision of your company and how to carve that stuff out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me a little bit about how you identify what you have on the team, and then also what the gaps are that you need to fill on the team, without actually needing to hire into titles. What's that process look like?
So, you know what? I try not to overanalyze it. I try not to overthink it because being part of ScaleUp, you have to move quickly. But I will tell you, this is probably one of the most important places because this can be the most expensive, as you said, Eddie.
Yep.
So basically, the process that I have experienced that I go through that I've seen other companies be successful with this, and this is the hard part though, is you take a step back and you look at the team that you have today and you go through their experiences and just kind of take a, you know what, they have 3 years of experience in this capacity or capability. Sales, they have this much more experience in marketing. They have this much experience in finance. They have this much experience in, engineering, so you kind of look at that piece of it. But when you're looking at that, you're comparing that to your company strategy. So where is your company at today? So let's say that you have a strong sales growth in your company, but you're seeing that you're having some challenges around customer retention. You're having some challenges around the customer success area. So that's a gap you want to fill. The question is, do you fill it with bringing somebody on that can wear other hats, or do you bring them on as a subcontractor or just a third party, or a short term to come in to go, okay, let's understand what's happening within the customer churn example that I have. So you go through that assessment, and then you basically we overlay it on kind of a matrix to go, where is the gap? And then you start looking for people with those capabilities that fill that gap. Because if you're going to hire, I don't know, many of you have experienced this, but sometimes people tend to hire people like you. You kind of get, people start looking alike. They start, you start managing alike, and you don't want that. At diversity, we could talk about a whole nother topic about diversity, but you really want a diverse team that have strong capabilities so that the team is stronger than the individual. And I know people say that, and that sounds a little cliche,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it is truly that in ScaleUp, because you need to carry this company forward quickly.
Mhm.
And you all wear different hats, and you have to have that diverse thinking that goes along with it. Does that answer your question, Eddie? So
Yeah, and I love that too. And I think you're right. I think a lot of it, you are looking for different perspectives, right? You're looking for people that have had success, maybe not exactly the same way that you did in previous endeavors, and people that can kind of think outside of your box a little bit. Oh, like I think we need to market this way, but maybe Carlos, who's sitting backstage right now, has a different opinion. That's actually
mhm.
one of the things that we came up with on our side, is coming up with like ABC testing, so that because I'm a software engineer by trade, so like I very analytical in breaking things down, and so I'm always like, well, why don't we just A/B test it and see which one's better? And so we've been ABC testing to get even more reach. But anyways,
There's a
yeah,
cultural fit too. I not to
yeah,
interrupt you, but there's also at the end, as you're looking at, you have to take a look at your cultural fit.
yep,
Like, where is your company today? I know we're talking about today, but you kind of have to think out with scale up 6 months to a year out. But you have a cultural fit too. So if you're bringing somebody in that, high powered, high energy, that, it may or may not fit within the kind of culture that you have today. And so what happens if you don't have a strong fit, and that's why I keep saying this is probably one of the most important things in your scale up company, is the hire, whether it's full-time, part-time, contract, is do they fit? And if they don't, I've seen this happen, and many of you probably have seen that as well, is could be the smartest, brightest, you know, quick moving kind of person on the team, but they can hold you back. They can hold back your company, and it slows you down to where it's not effective. So
yeah.
you got to pay attention to those too.
Yeah, I agree, and it's along with the culture too. It's understanding what the company's mission and values are too. Just because again, I'm using marketing and sales because that's what we're working on a lot right now. But it's, if I think, we have this very well defined brand values, brand mission, our definition, and you hire somebody to come in and market you, and they market you, completely different way and goes against everything that you guys do as a company and your culture, that's going to be a conflict, right? And it's going to be abrasive. And so, yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. I think it's important. And the other thing that I've realized too is, especially as you move out of a startup phase into the scale up phase, is that your company's going to go through different transformations, right? And so
Hmm.
you're talking about culture fit now, but the company that you are today isn't going to be the same company that you have in 3 to 5 years. You're going to go through various transformations, and um, again, your brand values may change during that time. So it's important to understand that the people that you bring in are, a long-term culture fit, and that they can kind of, change and adapt as the company grows, right? Um,
Which is another capability that I also look at is, how, a quick learner, somebody that can adapt to change. And you know what? Those are hard things to pin down, but it's important. It's
right.
important.
Yeah, no, I agree. So talk to me a little bit. We're talking about baselining right now. That was, just to circle back and kind of like remind everybody, that's where you're actually sitting down and you're identifying the gaps that you have in your team, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, you're also identifying your strengths, obviously.
Right, hopefully.
Strengths, which will then feed into here's some gaps, but you also line it with your strategy. So,
Hmm.
so if your strategy, like what you talked about, Eddie, is you kind of focus on sales and marketing right now. You know what? So if that is the area that you need to massage or get that muscle brought into, as a priority within your company right now, today, you're going to go assess what is that capability or the skill set of your team, both from a competency, capability perspective, experience perspective, as well as the size of company experience perspective. And then
Yeah.
you kind of assess, and you do that, and usually you do that. What we do is we do that. Whoever is the direct reports to the CEO or the head of the functional area. You can do both ways. But if you have, and it's not based on their title, so you could have a senior manager reporting to a CEO, which probably could be. Forget about the title. You bring them; they're reporting up to the CEO level, so they're bringing things to the table to the team. What is their competency that based on that? If that makes sense. So it's like
Hmm.
looking at what they are able to do and what they have done based on experiences, and what are they good at.
No, I really love that too. And one thing I want to just kind of circle back to too, we're talking about mentor, we were talking about mentors and advisors earlier, but there's this other role, there's this subject matter experts consultant. I don't think we've touched too much on that. How do you think the subject matter experts play into some of this, the stuff that we've discussed today? I know we touched on it briefly a couple times, but I'd like to dive a little bit more into that because I think it's a really important piece of the puzzle.
I do too. And so, I used to be part of an outsourcing firm. We provided services to companies. I was the outsourcer. I've also brought consultants in for my role. One of the things that I will tell you is this baselining should be done, I believe, with your consultants or your subject matter experts that you're using, that are maybe third party. Do they fit within the culture? What is their expertise that they're bringing into the table? Will they fit, and do they add that value to the rest of your team? And I guess I always look at that outsourcer, subject matter expert, third party as part of the team.
Right.
They're not going to be there full time. They're going to be there shorter time, whatever that might be. But they're part of the team. And
Right.
so I really focus on calling them part of the team. I've had other people that used to call me a vendor, and it feels like doesn't feel as part of that whole, hey, we're in this together. But I
Yeah.
would go through that same assessment. And there are
Yeah.
times that that's all you need. You just need the shot in the arm for this one thing, and maybe that's all the cash flow, that money that you have right now, but you've prioritized it as this is a number one priority based on our strategy that we need within our company. They will come in, hopefully they're quick learners. They understand the business, they understand the culture. And if they're not understanding that, they should be asking and learning about that quickly. And then they're going to bring that fill that gap that you have for
Right.
that short term.
And I think there's a couple things too that are that's really important. Like if you're using subject matter experts, I think the idea is that eventually they work them, if they're doing a good job, I think they eventually work themselves out of needing to work for you, right? Because that's the idea of bringing in subject matter experts, is to help fill out a need that you don't currently have. How important do you think things like standard operating procedures and defining processes are when bringing in a subject matter expert? Like, because the idea, at least from my point of view, is that you bring a subject matter expert in to help you understand really what you need to do, but also to hopefully put in some processes or standard operating procedures that you could then follow as that SME slowly phases out or eventually stops to work with your company, right?
Yeah. The ultimate goal is for me is if they can work themselves out of a job, right?
Yeah.
So that operating procedure provides you scalability,
Mhm.
meaning you have consistency in certain areas that you're focused on. You have that consistency. Now, keep in mind that may shift and change, and it probably will, but at least you have created the foundation. Because as you're moving in a scale, you're probably hiring people. And if you
Mhm.
don't have any kind of operating procedures, and that sounds big company ish a little bit, but I don't want you to think that you have to go out and like take 3 to 6 months to create standard operating procedures, because at the end of the day, that's a lifetime in a scale up. But you
Right.
need to have the foundational consistency for you to scale.
Yeah.
And so, for a subject matter expert to come in the door, to create that foundation, to work together with you, eventually he or she will be moving on because they have supported you in creating that foundation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I 100% agree with you. Like, and I remember when I first started development with Adriana, our co-founder, but we were very much. I remember this perfectly because I was very much I think we should have guidelines, but I don't think we should have processes. But the thing is, guidelines don't scale the way processes do.
Right.
And the other thing is that as you grow into a larger company, the other thing that I mean, you want to be careful because, at least, for us, being in a scale up stage, we don't want to feel like a stagnant corporation. We want people to feel like they have some creative control over their job and the responsibilities that we ask of them. But at the same time, we found that a lot of people are looking for guidance, right? Oh, hey,
Yes.
how should I do this? How, what does the company expect me to do in this situation? And so that's where, especially when you're scaling a company, if you need to be able to spin up a department, the people are going to ask you how things get done around the company. And if you can't answer that with, hey, these are the processes that we have in place, or this is how we typically operate, you're going to end up spending a lot of time retraining people or training new people. And, so to give them those guidelines to work with, that's you having gone out ahead of time to understand what actually works for your company. And it doesn't work the same for every single company. Like, you were working for a software development company, before Scale Up Edge. I would assume that the way that you guys do things, though it might be similar to the way that we do things, they're not going to be 100% the same. Like, we might find similarities, but we're also going to find differences. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really important to understand those, because the whole point of the scale up process, the whole point of the scale up stage, is to get to that next stage, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And talking about processes, it's especially important nowadays since we aren't sitting next to each other
Oh
as
yeah.
much, right? So my career, I would learn from other people that I'm sitting around, or I'd be able to knock on the door, go talk to a boss or somebody else. Now it's going to be a conversation, over the, virtual conversation. Which is still happening, which is still good. But having that foundation, having those guidelines, having those processes, you can hire great people, smart people that will come in, and you want them to be successful quickly
Hmm.
and scale up. And
Yep.
and so giving them a good jump start
Yep.
will keep them around, right? Because people get frustrated, they leave, or they're gonna be contributing quickly, and that's what I think a lot of people in Scale Up really get excited about is, hey, I'm helping this company grow quickly.
Yeah, no, and it's an extremely exciting time to be part of a company. There's a lot of work to be done, but I agree. I think it's also one of the most rewarding stages. Because that's when you actually start to see. Um, I don't want to say real results because you see real results at any stage of being in a company, but I think that's where you might start seeing some of the most rewarding, returns on investment, and people might actually see like some of the largest gains based on the work that they do. Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, Gene, we are at time, but I'd just like to thank you for stopping by to talk to us about scaling companies and how you can baseline your executive team. Before we go, Carlos, you want to pop in with the announcements?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Eddie, and thank you, Gene, for joining us. We have two more shows scheduled for this week. The next one is on Thursday with Simon Maple from Sync.io. And Thursday, we're going to be talking to Rachel Carpenter from Intrinio. That's what we have this week scheduled. And remember, the shows are now at 12 p.m. Pacific, now not at 11. So that's a new update for those who haven't were not really fully aware before. But 12 o'clock right here in Tech Backstage, p.m. Pacific. Join us and be here or be square. And thank you, Gene, for having joined us today.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thanks, y'all.